We're going to talk to a few people. I'm sure we have a few things to say. I do want to let you guys know, filming again, totally cool. Please do not Periscope. Please do not post spoilers. And Disney wanted me to let you know they are also filming it professionally. So members of the press, you'll have access to this later. But let me stop talking. Let's bring out Dave Filoni and Simon Kinberg. Yeah, put him on the hot seat. That's good.
Yes.
We have some really fun episodes which have a lot of comedy as well. There are some episodes with only droids in them.
About Chopper, let's not even look at these. Let's just jump right to it.
You've changed your mind.
Right,
whatever you planned on
Nope,
saying
is
go. Now moot. Okay,
let's
fair
talk,
enough.
Start with the ending. That's a good place to start.
Start with
right?
the ending.
What was that about? What was that about, guys?
I wouldn't tell you what it was about, but on Blu-ray and DVD, you'll be able to buy this. You'll be able to download it. First, before we start, I do want to say one thing. I want to thank Troy Underwood, who's been with us through the whole thing. You can imagine Troy having to deal with our dark side here, and he's with us all the way, and Eric Coleman as well, who's with me on Avatar the Airbender as well, all the way back to my Nickelodeon days, and Eric has been a big supporter of everything we've been doing. And I want to thank all my Lucasfilm compatriots. I'm not the only one to blame for what you saw. I'm going to call out the story group led by Carrie Hart, who's a huge inspiration to all of us. Henry Dory, Steve Melchin, the whole writing group who does a tremendous job as well for us. And Carrie Beck, one of our co-creators, Simon and I, for this whole mess that you've witnessed. We all went in knowing that it was going to be dark. And just so you know, this is fair for me to say before we get going here, that when this story got pitched out in the writer's room, we were all excited, and you can vouch for this. I was sitting there and I said, look, I have to say this. I know it's really exciting to pitch this really dark stuff, and it sounds great here in the writer's room, and it's awesome, and it's powerful, and yet a year from now, you're going to be in theater with a bunch of kids and family and a good Star Wars feeling, and it's a totally different thing, because the dark side is intense, is the cautionary tale here. And I, got vetoed, so I've made it dark and scary for you. So, but it's Darth Vader. You're not going to get like sunflowers and Jawas when Darth Vader shows up. So be careful what you wish for. Now you may proceed with your Inquisition, but I had to get all that out of the way. Kevin Kiner, my composer, did a wonderful job as well. I think Kevin Kiner is fantastic. There's so many people, but anyway.
I want to know first who was cheering Darth Vader when he came on the screen, because we got to look out for you guys later.
Dangerous people.
So let's talk. I know, some of the best things in Star Wars are mysteries left for fans to interpret, but answers are kind of nice too. So without, you can choose your own adventure here, but talk a little about the ending and Ahsoka's fate.
Gosh, Dave, you should answer all the questions.
I roped you in. There's no going back for you now. We talked about this quite a bit, though.
We talked about it. I'll rewind all the way, and maybe this will be a way to avoid the answer. Rewind all the way to when we talked about actually whether or not to bring in Clone Wars characters to season 2, and what that would mean to the show. And one of the sort of responsibilities we felt was that we were bringing in these huge characters, we'd have to give them really dramatic arcs. They would have to have as dramatic stories as our main characters, and certainly this, at least ending for now, was something that we talked about throughout the process of working on the season, and knew we were going to end this way this season.
Yeah, with Vader, again, you can't bring Vader in to challenge Ezra and Kanan. He's just not going to be that interested in him. You had to have a character that he was personally invested in. And once we had a personal story that would be the foundation of it, it made a lot more sense to tell the story. Plus, Ahsoka could interact with Ezra and Kanan, and you kind of get a more complete tale. Because this season we wanted to challenge Ezra with the dark side and what that window is now that he's accessed some sort of power. Danger comes with that. He has to be responsible with that power. Will you use it for yourself, or you use it selflessly? That's always the big question. So along the way, we get to kind of deal with some old characters and see how they are dealing with these same issues along the way. And I told Simon early on, I said, I don't think for the last like 2 minutes or so of this episode there's any dialogue.
Well, that's actually, I mean, I think when I wrote the original draft of this, I wrote it with scenes, with dialogue, and then you took it and you sent us, all the people in the group, a piece of music that isn't a piece of music, obviously, but it was a classical piece of music.
It was,
right?
More
like
depressing.
Yeah, it was. and it was your idea to make it all nonverbal and musical, which was 100% the right way to go. Also remember, I don't know exactly if this was the moment of inspiration for this, or it was just the first time I saw an image of it. We were all sitting around a table and you drew, Dave will draw images as we're working on story. And it's not that he's not paying attention, it's just that he likes to draw. And you drew an image of Vader's split mask, or helmet, which was, I thought, like one of the most compelling images I've ever seen in all of Star Wars. And it ended up in the show. But I do remember when you were actually just doodled it during a meeting.
Well, because one of the images paramount to this story, and all the versions of Ahsoka fighting Darth Vader that I've had over the years, and I've thought about it for a long time, is the image of her literally leaping up onto his, chest there, because the scale always intrigued me, that she's small and he's this, monolith, and that she could just be poised up there and with her two sabers knock one away and then strike at the helmet. That was always something that lasted year after year after year. And sometimes she died, and sometimes she didn't die after that course of events. So, and I was telling Kiri and Simon about it, and I said, oh, I said this image, and Kiri's like, well, let's do it. And I was like, oh, wow, just that easily, let's just do it. So, and then there it was, and I thought it turned out pretty good. I liked that moment.
And speaking of the dead or alive, if she were to check a box.
I think that right now what's important is it's really a moment for you as a fan, and for me to see more of what you're made of. Like, how strong is your faith? What do you believe? What did you see there in the final moments? Because I know what happened for sure. And I think that it would be just cruel and rob you of your own independence if I said blah, 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 blah. It's like I didn't put an image of Vader like dragging her head along at the end. That'd be horrible. That would be like, I couldn't even get off this lot if that happened. And yet I didn't have a loth cat come up and purr at her ankle and she picked it up and said, close one. So neither of those is an acceptable outcome. So I just kind of picked some really, for once, you'll say for once because I never answer your questions, but nebulous with complete certainty as to what happened in my own mind, and now at conventions I'll be plagued with what people
Till the end of time.
Which is fine. I can deal with that because interest is good, because it means we keep making a show. So that's fine.
That's positive. Okay.
Fair enough.
I want to come back to Ahsoka and Ezra, but I want to ask you guys about Darth Maul. He had such an interesting, almost Yoda-like approach to how he lured everybody in. Can you talk about developing his role in this episode?
It was, again, something that we talked about pretty early on, and how we all wanted to bring him in a real way, and in this sort of finale arc. And one of the debates was when we revealed his face. I remember also initially when we first started talking about it, it was immediate that you saw it was him. And I don't remember if it was your idea or Kiri's idea or Henry's idea. Do you remember whose idea? Somebody's idea, it wasn't mine. That you actually keep him cloaked, and that Ezra and the audience come to actually trust him, so that when you reveal him, it's actually a surprise and to the audience, and that Ezra and Kanan can have this debate about this guy because you've come to accept that he's an ally, and in many ways he is an ally, right? Like there are certain things that they're opposed to the same enemy. But at any rate, yeah, we wanted to make him feel like he could potentially be a master in the episode.
Well, cloth is a pain in the butt for us. Technically, we have a very limited amount of cloth sim that we can do. And when you have Vader, cloth is an absolute.
He has a lot of cape, sure.
His cape is simmed, and Maul's hood is kind of pinned more on a rig. So that defines a lot. Like, I would love to do a lot of flowing clothes and arcing cloth, but we just can't do it. So we have to design, the characters design team, to kind of fit the story we're telling and still be believable. But if you remember, there was a really, really ultra fan, uber nerdy beginning to this story arc, which was Ahsoka wasn't even in it, and we were trying to devise, you and I were very hot on this idea that we were gonna do an episode from Vader's point of view, and he was hunting people, and you would think it was a crew of the Ghost, and only at the last moment would it be revealed that he was actually hunting Darth Maul. And then you and I were like, it'd be Vader versus Maul. And it was like, yeah, that would be great. And then, but then it was so just like self-serving, like roll of 20 stuff that we just couldn't. And the
Like,
Ahsoka story.
You just made that so much nerdier.
Yeah, it just became so much more compelling to say, but if it's Ahsoka, and then slowly but surely it dwindled away. And then I had a follow-up meeting with you after the first version of the script, and I read it. And remember, I was telling you, gosh, we have to eliminate this person, eliminate this person, blind Kanan, like all this stuff. And I'm like, each one of these things is going to take so much time. And I was like, I need everybody out by Act 3. Everybody out of the pool. Well, I only have Vader and Ahsoka to deal with to even resolve that, because it's only like a 7-minute act. So any prolonged lightsaber fight, all of that gets apportioned, like how much time I have to tell the story in 42 minutes. In a longer format, all those beats would be stretched out longer, you can imagine. But yeah, it was one of the interesting panic moments of there's too much story in this short little time.
Yeah, that could have been a 2-hour finale.
Yeah, easily.
So let's bring out a couple more faces. Come on out, Ashley Eckstein and Taylor Gray. So that was the first time you both saw the episode, right?
Yep.
Wow. How amazing was that?
What happened?
You got him right here, so, you know.
I'll tell him next session. I'll explain it in detail to Taylor. But
That is not true.
not true. I won't do it.
Actually, it's kind of a big episode for Ahsoka. How big? Talk about what did you know going in, and what surprised you about that episode?
Well, obviously I knew the lines I recorded, and that was pretty much it. I've been giving Dave an incredibly hard time because we've known each other for 10 years now, and why do you say ugh?
A long time.
But he's always told me everything, always the storylines ahead of time, and nobody believed me out there, but I didn't know. And wow, I don't even have much to say. I'm still processing it. It was so beautiful and so amazing, and I do have a million questions, which now that I've seen it, you have to be forced to answer.
Kind of. But see, you couldn't know what happened because Ahsoka didn't know what was going to happen to her. So if you knew what was going to happen, it would make your performance false. So I couldn't tell you ahead of time that was what happened to you. It doesn't make any sense.
But now we can all know.
I could
The
tell her,
performance
but
is
we
over.
won't tell you. Unless, of course, she is truly dead, which is there's nothing more to tell. Because she wouldn't know that she's dead. So she's dead.
I don't even know what to do with you right now, Dave Filoni.
I've been up since 4. I'm on.
All right, well, let's switch it down to Taylor. Ezra has had quite the arc this season, becoming more and more powerful, getting tempted by the dark side. Talk about him partnering up with Maul and what you think his future holds.
Well, I just asked Dave a question when we got back there. At the very end, he's holding a holocron, and he looks up, and I think his eyes went red. No? Yeah, but then I was asking, is it just a red animator who was like, oh, he has something red in his hand, so let's reflect red off his eyes, or are we saying something with that? And I can't get a straight answer.
I'm shocked.
You know, what's great is you should have seen he had to stand between Freddie and Sam to record his lines. And Freddie knows a lot about Star Wars, and Sam knows everything about Star Wars.
And I know a ton about Star Wars.
Right, yeah, and it's like playing out before my very eyes as Whitware's just coercing Taylor over to his side. You know Whitware, and if he was here, that'd be crazy. But I thought Sam's performance was great. He is really something else as Maul, and you guys played off each other really, really well. So it's just interesting to see you guys all just being who you are. You couldn't be anything else. It's interesting, fascinating.
No, I would say, Taylor, your performance really convinced me. I'm like, oh, maybe, you know what, maybe Maul's okay. I should know better, but maybe. And I want to talk a little about Maul, and any of you can speak to this. I feel, you know, he's bitter towards the Sith in a way that I don't think necessarily Ahsoka's bitter towards the Jedi, but they both walked away from their previous lives.
Yes.
What sort of parallels do you see between them?
Well, he's red and she's orange, and that's very parallel.
Similar.
I don't know. I mean, it was an interesting thing. It was almost like a side thing that you kind of realized along the way that during Clone Wars we'd gotten away from just being absolute about you're either a Jedi or you're a Sith. And there were people that were disenfranchised, adventurous among them, that kind of lost their path and lost their way. And those two characters, Ahsoka and Maul, had come together in a more final story that we didn't get to finish on Clone Wars. So you can see hints of that in their dialogue where the two of them talk as if they'd met before, because indeed they had. And it was a very important moment in the timeline of Clone Wars that those two characters crossed. But yeah, it's all about the way Maul would digest what happened to him and throw it into the realm of I need to seek revenge. And Ahsoka would take it and not make it about that. Like, she doesn't want to believe, I'll give you something here. She doesn't want to believe that Anakin would be capable of becoming Darth Vader. And when we were talking about the possibility, George and I talked at length about Order 66 and Ahsoka and what happened. And we had it all figured out. And one of the biggest things, one of the key elements is that her whole life, once she's trained by Anakin, when she's at peace and calm and looks into the Force, she can sense the presence of her friend. And this is something that occurs. When tragedy strikes someone, you'll read an article about someone that tells something bad happened to their parent or their sibling, and they call and something's happened. So you have this connection between people. She's always looked at the Force and been able to be comforted that he is there. When Order 66 happens, she reaches out to the Force and he's gone. There is no Anakin Skywalker. So just like there is non-existence of so many Jedi, she assumes he's dead. So when she encounters Darth Vader at the beginning of Rebels Season 2, she looks into this dark void, and at the center of it, she gets hit by something that's so familiar, it's overpowering, that it just shocks her back, and she goes unconscious. Her unconscious mind is completely aware that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, but her conscious mind can't handle it. She just cannot accept that truth. So she spends the whole season basically coming to grips with that fact, which we see in the Jedi Temple, that this is the truth. Once she understands the truth that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, she is faced with the same problem Luke Skywalker faces, which is Luke says, I cannot kill my own father, and she cannot kill this person that was her dear friend. She cannot do it, but nor will she leave him and abandon him. But she feels like she did before, because she feels guilt. Because if he became this terrible dark person that's done all these horrible things, she feels like she is in part responsible because she could have been there and prevented it. That's not necessarily true, but tell her that. So those are the type of things she's dealing with, and I've drawn a lot of parallels to the writers between what Lancelot feels guilt-wise for the betrayal of Arthur and the kingdom there, you know, anything with Parsifal or Galahad, like these type of knights that do great deeds, but they become scarred. And this is Ahsoka's problem. Also, I've spoken at length about Gandalf. So if you want to really understand Ahsoka in this time period and what's happening to her, you could read Lord of the Rings, but you've probably seen that, but you should read it. But get the book on letters that Tolkien wrote, where he explains in detail more of the things that are really going on under the surface of his characters. And I used a lot of that extensively to inform what's happening to her. So that's some good stuff there. And people might have to go read, which is always a good thing to do.
Ahsoka the White's going to show up at the Battle of Rohan. That's what
You're thinking more along the lines of the truth now. But you must understand what that would fully mean for her, which would be interesting, but we don't know. I mean, I don't know. It really depends how many seasons we get. What you really want to talk to is Gary and Eric and Troy and say, you know, I sound like a pledge drive on public channel, but keep making this show. Gosh darn, that was some dark stuff, but I'm still there with you. But let's have some fun episodes, and we will. Lots of fun, more Chopper. I see you, Troy.
Ashley, you've brought Ahsoka so far, and you knew she was going to confront Darth Vader. What was it like, I guess, to record, even recording, going back a couple episodes, recording with Matt again as Anakin? Can you talk a little about the emotions involved?
Yeah, well, now is probably when I get a little too emotional and Dave says, Ahsoka's not that emotional. So, but I think, you know, recording with Matt, honestly, I thought those days were done. I mean, I really didn't think I'd ever get to record with Matt again. And so to get that opportunity to record with him was truly a gift. And I didn't believe up until that point, I didn't believe that Ahsoka knew that that was Darth Vader. I still thought that, you know, she was skeptical. All the fans were like, oh, she knows. And I was like, I don't really think she knows. Kind of like what Dave said. You know, it's like believing that a family member could murder someone. You just can't believe that. So after that recording with Matt is, you know, when she finds out. And it was now having to face the reality that, okay, that those happy times are gone. Those are no more. And now I need to confront the fact that Anakin is Darth Vader. And, you know, I've always said that no matter what happens with Ahsoka, I trust Dave, so whether she lives or dies, he's always going to do the right thing for the overall Star Wars story. And so whatever that be, I promise this, that I'm always fine with it. And of course I became so attached to her and I didn't want anything bad to happen to her, but he once told me that if Ahsoka and Vader faced off, it wouldn't be a good thing for Ahsoka. So, and that was several years ago. And so I always had that in the back of my head. It's like, okay, I trust Dave, I want her to live, but oh, it's not going to be good for Ahsoka. So I was just so nervous. And then I would get photos on my phone of Ahsoka with her head chopped off that Dave and Henry would send me from record sessions, like, haha, you're having a good day.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I told you that was too much. I said that was too much. So the writers, once they get involved with images, they just lose all sense of reality. I can't have a picture, and they go
Like
crazy. They should have just done it in words, right? It should have only the words, yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. Oh, man, that was weird. Ooh, weird, ooh. Weird.
You are quick to throw.
You know, I think that, and this might be the truth. That's a terrible way to go into this. But, you know, I think Matt Leonard is the only one that knew what happened. Because I thought in my mindset that I found it really compelling that I could tell him what happened and you not know. Because you guys work together so long and we never see him because he's off, you know, and he's barely on the show because he's like 8 lines altogether. So I thought it'd be really kind of funny to tell Matt what happened. Because I would call Matt and be like, hey, I need you to record one more line. Because I would work on this, I'd be like, I need one more line. And he's like, what do you need? I need you to say, and you will die. And I'm like, he's like, oh, that's good. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be funny. So let's record that line. Because we know you and we know you're personal, you'll take it. But it was kind of a bonding thing. We turned it into a bonding thing for us. It became very good and strengthening, you know. But yeah, he's Vader now, so he's the guy cuckoo. But it was a good thing for us. I don't know if he knew, I don't think he knows whether you survive or not. He hasn't seen it, but he was aware of a little bit more. Because Vader, you know, Vader knows a lot, so it makes more sense.
See where I am on the pecking order.
No, it's fine. You're fine. You're fine. You get like a whole thing and the lights are, you fought Maul, you fought Vader, you fought, look at all those people you fought.
So I want to know, am I reprinting the Ahsoka Lives t-shirt?
I think what you do, I think what's great about this, again, it's kind of like you could sell 2 shirts. This is what I do. I help her out all the time. But what you do is you sell this shirt for like the optimist, right? And then you sell a new shirt with, and just all you have to do to take that design out a question mark. And that's all you have to do. It's a really inexpensive thing. You can even take like back stock you have of additional shirts that can't sell, and you could just like boom, put a question mark on it, and it's a whole new shirt. It's a brand new shirt. You can sell that one, mark it up.
Done and done. We're going to get to audience questions in just a second.
Oh, I bet you that's a good idea.
Ask him all about his marketing.
Did James
ideas.
go home yet? James, no, he's still here.
Where is he?
Okay.
Okay, well now I know to call on him, so. But I want to ask Taylor, I want to ask you another question first. I feel like Ezra had to prove himself so much. There were many instances this season of him saying, like, look guys, like I got this, and then Ghost Crew being like, well maybe you do. And then the end being like, oh, you totally did.
Yeah.
So was Maul being so willing to like recruit Ezra and take his assistance reassuring for him?
Yeah, it was very reassuring for him, and he calls him apprentice. He says all these big words around him, and he seems to trust Ezra, and that's a big thing. And now his master can't see, so what that leads to, I mean, rather follow someone who you can kind of point out where you're going. But no, that's me making stuff up. Dave's not happy about that. No, I think it's big, and what happens is he has a lot more responsibility. I'm gonna stop there.
You're doing great. Just keep going. It's fine.
Yeah, it was very reassuring.
Good answer. All right, let's turn to the audience. Gentleman in the red shirt, right there. They'll bring a microphone to you.
Thank you all for coming. This was spectacular. You all truly make up Star Wars, so thank you. Actually, the good news is it sounds like, you know, you might be dead, but you still might come back somehow as like a wizard or something. Dave, you have nothing to apologize for. Frankly, I don't think you killed enough people tonight.
Wow. Wow. Security?
He was one of the guys cheering for Vader, I can tell.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
My question is, the Grand Inquisitor, when we saw the vision of him in the Jedi Temple, will we learn more about this character possibly having been a Jedi or possibly a Sentinel, or was this perhaps the Temple playing tricks on our minds? Thank you.
I can answer that question. The answer to that question is the Grand Inquisitor was a Jedi Knight. The Grand Inquisitor, Pablo Hidalgo and I have been debating which one he was, but he is one of the temple guards that arrests Ahsoka when she is accused of treason against the Jedi Knights. And he is also one of, more importantly, the temple guards in Clone Wars that is with Anakin when he fights Barasafi and arrests Barasafi for treason. So he is one of the two guards, I believe, that escorts her into the giant courtroom where Palpatine is overseeing everything. So he hears Varys's complete speech about the corruption and the state of the Senate and the Jedi Order. And that is kind of like a seed that gets planted in his mind about she's right. And when Order 66 comes out, he further realizes how right she is about all of the corruption. So it was like the beginnings of his descent into the dark side. And what he's warning Kanan about in this apparition, which is kind of a consciousness that's within Kanan. Kanan, and we talked a bit about this at the end of season 1, Kanan unconsciously regrets that he doesn't try to save the Inquisitor. He has no reason to do so, because the Inquisitor never shown him that he's going to be kind. But it doesn't mean that as a Jedi, he still shouldn't extend his hand to like do the selfless thing and save life, period. So that's why that vision is talking to him. And through the Force, it's giving him a bit more knowledge about who this person was, warning him that, you know, you are all susceptible to this. Someone was asking me, you know, is Ezra susceptible to the dark side? I said, yeah, of course, everybody is. Like, everybody is. You don't have to be a Jedi or a Sith to be susceptible to the dark side. The dark side can be, you know, one of the politicians in the Senate that seizes things for his own greed and own power. It can be, you know, Hera, she decides to be a TIE fighter pilot and rip things up and do things for her own. When you make it very simple for yourselves in your storytelling, if you're being selfish and self-motivated and doing things to gain power for yourself, evil, Sith. Selfless, you know, for others, even sacrifice your own life to be more powerful than you could possibly imagine, Obi-Wan Kenobi, good. The Jedi in the Clone War, unfortunately, are far too to the center, and that's why they fail, and that's why they lose. So there's that full-on answer for you.
We got one. Okay, let's look right here in the front, right there with the. Are you wearing Sabine? Is that where you? Yes.
Okay, so the third Inquisitor, I was really curious about what kind of species he was. Since they never.
I can answer this too.
I love
this. You love when I have to answer the question. Circle gets a square. Boy, you're going back if you get, you're with me on that joke. What I believe that species is, and this is a deep cut, look in your character encyclopedia, he is a Turellian Django jumper. Which isn't, I know, it's a real thing, trust me. I'm not even making that up. I remember because I'm like, that is a weird name, George. But she was featured, I think, like Cassie Cryer or Ione Mercy. I think Cassie Cryer from the Clone Wars was this little pair of thieves, and they stole Ahsoka's lightsaber. And he is the same as that. They're acrobatic and can jump on all kinds of things. You see the weird toes and hands, and so I believe that's what he is. Maybe, I never asked him.
Let's say it is. Right there on the right in the gray hoodie.
Hello. I have two quick questions. First off, we saw a cross-guard lightsaber there. Can you talk? Is that a Jedi's lightsaber? Or is that a Sith lightsaber? And the other question is, this episode seemed a little bit influenced by Indiana Jones. There's an artifact, there's a temple, can you talk a little bit about that as well?
The Indiana Jones one I'll take, I guess. It's easier. Less controversial. I'll let you handle the controversial ones because you have an amazing way of actually deflecting and yet making it feel like you gave the answer. Because it's amusing. Raiders is a I think for a lot of us the second or third favorite thing we had growing up after Star Wars, and it was something that we talked about when we were developing it, and imagery that we would reference. So yeah, it was very much a conscious referent for us, and an opportunity we thought for the first time in the show to do a slightly different genre in a way. So yeah, it was there on purpose.
The crossguard thing was just really, it's a very big challenge to make Star Wars on any level. And the pressure that the episode 17 had faced to try to bring that to life, I thought was huge. I thought that JJ and his team really did a great job. And I thought, I really liked where they were their most daring with things like BB-8 and the crossguard saber, because we hadn't seen that before. And I love Star Wars I haven't seen before. Because I always like to point out to my design team, like, I didn't know there were walkers on snow until I saw them. I didn't know there was a city in the clouds until I saw it. Empire Strikes Back did not try to just be A New Hope, and neither did Return of the Jedi. So I loved those elements in those movies that, that they did. They came up with this lightsaber that caused this big stir among fandom, and it's always great when something does that. And Kylo Ren was really fascinating to me because he seemed to be a student of history, especially Sith history and Jedi history. And I asked Kiri Hart if I could put a crossguard saber among the artifacts in the ruins of this temple. And she went to Kathy and asked, and I said, well, I really just want to put it in for one shot as a nod to those guys for the tremendous achievement that they were making in this kind of unique saber. And that, thousands of years ago, there was some other Jedis that had it. So it absolutely was Jedi. Because I have seen double-bladed sabers that are Jedi and double-bladed sabers that are Sith. And I don't think there's many things that one of the groups invented that the other didn't try. And I think it's a certain type of discipline and, trying to figure out why you would use that saber and why it was abandoned. All types of swords have been developed over history and abandoned for different reasons and techniques. And then I was, we put it in the trailer, and they were like, oh, you put this in the trailer, they're gonna think Ezra uses that. I'm like, it's not my fault. I can't help that. I'll give you another strange reference point that I used. This is how my mind works. It's very whatever, but I was telling Gilroy, I was like breaking down this episode visually in the second half of it. And I was trying to say, how are we going to figure out how each of these things plays out structurally? For me, I need a beat here and a beat here and a beat as each thing escalates, because it's a lot of things to juggle. And the diagram, I would do a lot of visual diagrams for the team to follow when we're storyboarding and everything. The diagram I drew them was actually Donkey Kong. Because I was like, we have a pyramid shape which has levels, and they go up, and I'm like, it really has to work on that simple of a level, because there's so many moving parts. What I'm getting at is your audience has to track it visually. And if you can't give them something to grab onto that makes sense very clearly, they'll get lost in the geography. A lot of movies you probably go and see on the weekend, you enjoy a lot less because you just can't tell where the heck people are. And where they are in relation to one another defines a lot of times the tension you have in a scene. And the tension is everything. So you think of Luke in the trench. He is in a trench, and he's going to hit that mark. And when he's driving towards that to me is always the best Star Wars movie, because everything is coming to that one point. Everything is driving towards that, and you know exactly how it's going to work. You know exactly how it's going to fail. And right when it looks like it's going to fail, a voice of a person you thought was just dead goes, "Use the Force." And you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And everybody jumps up like, "This is going to work!" If you do that, and we are chasing that moment in Star Wars, trying to we want to get you to that point. And so I use these type of little visual cues in Donkey Kong. So there you go.
Let's talk a minute actually about that Sith temple, because I believe that's maybe the most amount of time we've spent exploring, and certainly the inner structure. Can you tell me what influenced the design and the look of the temple?
I was obsessed with light. The light and the dark had to be in everything about this episode. So there's a couple things. And I was diagramming. I was sending you drawings. I was doing all these drawings and sending just time check this out. I'm drawing this, and maybe you put something here. And I like to see what he comes back with. And then I'll draw. Oh, that's cool, and I'll draw something off that. And I try to do that for the writers when I can, just to give them images to feed off of. But I wanted this kind of like Dante's Inferno kind of concept, where there's like the sky, right, which is the light, and as the heaven, they descend to the clouds, and they reach like a plane of glass where you see their inverted reflections in it, and you don't realize that is hollow. And when you crack that, you fall through. And then I was really interested in this idea that what became the light sky became darkness and stars, but it's actually beyond. It's like that old way that the Greeks looked at the sky and thought there were pinholes in the sky, in the night sky. So I wanted to play those kind of ideas, and then we'd get these kind of pillars of light. So that is the combative level, where light and dark are kind of intertwined and in conflict. And then when you go below that, you get into the underworld. You kind of get into the world of the dead. And Maul, for all intents and purposes, is dead. So he's kind of the walking dead underneath the earth there until he can be lifted up. And what lifts him up is youth and hope and opportunity, and that carries him up the staircase. So that a little bit too, you see them going up, and then the other stuff going down, which is a little bit of a clue for what's happening at the end. But I don't like to do a lot of those type of puzzles. I don't like to do things that are really abstract all the time. But this was an episode where it could be abstract, because the explanation of everything is in the coding of every scene. Every environment is intentional with this. Ezra's in a pillar of light when he needs Maul. To join Maul and help him, he has to leave it. And none of that is arbitrary. I tell my storyboard artists, absolutely nothing we do is arbitrary. We are controlling every frame, every moment has to be designed. And so the team does a great job at thinking on that level. And for Kevin too, once he can see those images and the interplay of light and dark, can affect how he writes the music. And we would have a whole session just on the music and the sound design of that temple, which is really brooding. So we would know when we needed music to reinforce, and when we needed to just be empty and put you really in that place. So one place you can use that, I'll give you two examples quick, because I know we're short on time. When the female Inquisitor dies, you go from an intense moment of music to absolute nothing in reality. So when it hits her, it hits you with impact, because there's no music. It's just sound, and she falls, and it's like being shocked into reality. So there's a big thud there. when Kevin did this great thing in the music where Ezra is ascending on a pillar and the music is descending against him. So again, we have this interplay of ascension and descension, always playing. It's like those little escalators you see the bulldog on in Tom and Jerry cartoons. You're going up the escalator, someone else going down the escalator. That used to mess me up as a kid, by the way. Remember those weird episodes of the bulldog would like go to hell, and you're like, what is this? Like, this is terrifying. But cartoons can do that.
For later.
Animation can do that. That's probably why I made this whole episode. It's probably not my fault at all. It's in my subconscious from those old cartoons, because those are some intense things. But animation can really do anything. It's just a medium. It's like using a pencil or a Sharpie or oil paints or watercolor. And I think not often enough are we asked in our animation world to do things that are sometimes a bit more epic and serious. We got into it in Airbender, which I liked a lot, but it's hard because, thank you, but there aren't a lot of jobs in animation where you get to do these type of stories and movies, and we have brilliant comedy people, I mean, just unbelievably brilliant, but it's, we don't foster a lot of the kind of epic storytelling that I think a lot of people that have come into the industry now would truly like to do. A lot of these kids coming up with animation have been raised on anime and watched all sorts of stories, like Coraline. It was fantastic animation. It has some very dark elements to it, but it is still fantastic. So I'm just always interested in broadening what animation is doing. It's capable of anything, and we're very lucky that Disney XD is there with us, to do some of these experimental things, and we have a wide range of stories in Star Wars Rebels, which I like. I like that it's different. You never know what you're gonna get.
The audience, there in the middle, I think you're wearing red. I think your names might be James also.
Oh, Clancy. Clancy, help me. Hi, James.
Hello, Dave.
How are you?
So, when I heard Malcor 5 specifically, I thought, oh my god, Starforge, oh my god, Revan, oh my god, Malik, oh my god, non-canonical material. So, does this mean we'll get to see non-canonical material in Star Wars Rebels? Thrawn, please?
Who? What did you say?
Please, Thrawn.
Thrawn. Yes. Thrawn. That blue guy. Right? Well, James, I never know. I'll tell you this. I work the same way with Rebels that I worked on Clone Wars, which is the world of the expanded universe is there for us. There's some fantastic ideas in there, and we mine it all the time. I think it's important because a lot of people put a lot of work into those stories. A lot of fans love those stories, and I respect that greatly. The Imperial aircraft carrier that the Rebels stole is actually something out of West End Games. Doug Chang had done a design of it, so we used that. I like using stuff that's there. I don't think we always need to invent something new. So over the years working with everyone, I would always say, well, do we have anything like that in Star Wars? Because what a thrill for somebody if it turns up on screen. So, but wouldn't it be extraordinary, James? It would be the most outlandish thing to tell you today. And so you ask me if it's Thrawn going to be on the show, and I'm like gonna tell you, like I would tell you after everything else. Like, I know what you're playing at, my friend, because you mind tricked me. But it's like you think that I'm distracted with Vader and Ahsoka and all this other, stuff that's crazy and mythical, and you're like, hey, is Thrawn in the show? Like almost like it's a throwaway. But no, I might be an up since 4, but I'm still more awake when you're around. I'm not gonna tell you that. I wouldn't tell you that if it was true, and I wouldn't tell you that just to make you hope it would happen. Even if I knew it wasn't going to happen, I would let that linger. I would find ways to send you signals that it's going to happen, and it's not going to happen. Like, just to make it happen. I would wear red contacts in a Rebels recon just to mess with you and say, it's like Thrawn's eyes. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? I had pink eye. You're crazy, James. And I would just manipulate this thing to the fullest extent because, that's just what I would do. It's like a hobby. I find it fun. You can sympathize with Gilroy because he gets this stuff all the time, him and Melching. it's a fun hobby, and it's part of being a director. So there's no way I'm going to answer that question. The only other thing I almost did today, and I'm going to tell you, because you'll find the humor in this. You won't, but I totally was going to wear the shirt that said, relax, cause Rex lives. And I thought that would be really ironic, because it's like saying, well, admitting Rex lives, I'm not saying anything about you. So, and it's very true, Rex lives. Rex is still alive, Rex is still kicking. I look at my friend. The one thing I have toyed with, and we'll see how you feel about this is probably spoiler, Carrie Beck, but I gotta give him something. I've said absolutely nothing today, and my wife's like, yeah, it's just like being at home. But I think the one thing I have really thought about is, I really do think that Rex is that guy on Endor. I really do. Why else is there a bearded old guy on Endor, Jono? Why? It makes no sense. If you don't want that to happen, do you know what that means? I'm gonna make that happen. I'm getting like Palpatine, I'm getting power crazy.
So you've gone to the dark side, is what you're saying.
Not really, I don't think so. But when you do, you never think you do. Honestly, I've been watching too much Golden Girls.
That explains a lot. We have time for one more quick question. Let's go over here. Over here is the, look right here. Oh yeah, sorry. Mike.
Okay, I can talk. Okay.
Well, let's bring a mic so everybody in the back can hear you.
We don't want them to miss the question that we're not going to answer.
I don't know. I think you might answer this one. Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland and Fangirls Going Rogue. And I just wanted to ask you, Dave Filoni, you had mentioned that Kevin Kiner, you had some classical piece of music in mind for this episode, the end of the episode, and I wanted to know what that was, and I just love hearing about the music.
I don't know, Kevin. I don't think we should reveal our sources. I do remember, of course. I'm looking at Kevin, and Kevin's like, You know, we do temp a lot of the episodes, you know, and sometimes we get close to that, and sometimes we don't. Usually, you know, I always tell the episode directors, don't fall in love with the temp. The temp music is just to give you a feeling or an idea. So what I'll do with a piece of music is I'll give it to everybody and say, this is the feeling that I want. This is, you know, the emotion that I want expressed when we're playing it. But, you know, then Kevin has to go and he has to struggle with finding out, now how do I make that his own? How does he express it and do it in a Star Wars way? And what he's brilliant at is always making me forget about the temp. I just become obsessed with the music that he's created, and it's individual and unique in its own right. So, you know, it's a real skill. We did kind of do a Philip Glass thing at one point during the season, which was really fantastic. Something my dad he's a big opera person, and so growing up in my house, he had these huge speakers, would listen to opera all the time, and you know, so what's important if you're working with the composers, you need to have a kind of a little index of music that you've listened to. You have to be able to talk their language. So if you're, you know, making films, you can say to people, you hear this music, like I'll cite, you know, Copeland and, you know, Appalachian Spring or Rodeo or stuff like that. I say, guys, this is the feeling I want. What this music does for you, you know, or the Pines of Rome, and I'll give it to the storyboard artist. I'm like, say, play this when you're storyboarding this scene. Because I'm just a big believer that when you're kind of influenced by something like that as an artist, when it touches you, that it kind of like flows through you onto the page and then onto the screen, and it's just kind of a little bit of abstraction. It's in the DNA of your own creation, and that way this other artist is kind of compelling you, which is a kind of nice thing. But I am excited because I just found out Kevin's going to get to release his 2 seasons finally of music for Star Wars Rebels. That is long overdue, but congratulations, Kev. Really awesome. All right, so there, I answered that question. We had behind
You got a couple in. I want to go down the line really quick, and this is not a question for Dave, because he doesn't answer and he's not going to share. So Taylor, as far as you, not your character, do you think what do you think the status of Ahsoka is?
Alive.
Ashley?
I think Ahsoka lives.
I know the answer, so I'm not going to answer. I think, like Dave says, it's up to your imagination, and then eventually you will learn one way or another.
Eventually. Well, we want to thank you all so much. So thank you all for coming. Don't forget to tell your friends to watch this Wednesday at 9 o'clock. It's a 2-part finale, so you got an hour. Plan accordingly. And we really appreciate your support, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.